Billionaire chases a poor girl who stole his wallet, but the truth she reveals shatters him. Before we begin, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine waking up one morning, and the one person you love most in this world can barely breathe. Imagine being so small, so powerless, that even your loudest cry for help sounds like a whisper the world refuses to hear. Now imagine this. What if the only way to save that person was to do something you knew was wrong? What if desperation pushed you so far that you had to choose between your conscience and your mother's life? This is a story about that choice. About a little girl who had nothing. About a billionaire who had everything. And about the moment when their two worlds collided in a way that would change both of their lives forever. Some people say miracles don't happen anymore. But I'm here to tell you, sometimes they do. Sometimes they happen when a child refuses to give up. And sometimes they happen when a man finally learns to see. This is the story of Maya and Rohan. And it begins on an ordinary morning that would become anything but ordinary. Let's begin. The autumn sun climbed slowly over the city of Mumbai. Its golden light touched the tops of glass towers, painted the busy streets below, warmed the faces of people rushing to work. It was the kind of morning that poets write about. The kind of morning that makes you grateful to be alive. But Maya didn't feel any of that warmth. She walked slowly through the narrow lanes of her neighborhood, her small feet dragging in sandals that were more holes than shoes. Her dress, faded from too many washings, hung loose on her thin frame. 8 years old. That's all she was. 8 years old, and she carried a weight that would break most adults. Her mother was dying. Priya had been sick for 3 days now. What started as a simple fever had grown into something terrible, something that shook her body and stole her breath and made her skin burn like fire. Last night had been the worst. Maya had sat beside her mother's mattress, holding her hand, watching her chest rise and fall in shallow, painful breaths. She had prayed every prayer she knew. She had whispered every promise she could think of. Please, God, please don't take her from me. She's all I have. But this morning, when the sun rose, the fever hadn't broken. If anything, it had gotten worse. Maya had no father. She'd never known him. No aunts, no uncles, no cousins, no grandparents. Just Mama. That was her whole world. Mama, who worked cleaning floors in houses where people didn't even look at her. Mama, who came home exhausted every night but always smiled when she saw Maya's face. Mama, who split her small portion of rice so her daughter could have more. And now Mama was slipping away. Maya had tried everything. She'd knocked on doors in her neighborhood. Mrs. Sharma, who lived 2 houses down, had opened her door just a crack, seen Maya's desperate face, and said, "I'm sorry, child. We have our own troubles." Then she'd closed the door. Mr. Patel hadn't even opened his. She'd heard him inside, heard the television playing, but he pretended not to hear her knocking. One by one, the doors of her world had closed. So Maya did something she'd never done before. She left her neighborhood. She walked toward the other side of the city, the side where the wealthy lived. The side where buildings touched the sky and cars gleamed like jewels and people wore clothes that looked brand new every single day. The difference was like stepping from night into day. Here, the streets were clean. The air smelled different, less smoke, less cooking oil, less poverty. People walked with a confidence Maya had never seen in her neighborhood. They walked like the ground was lucky to hold them. Like problems were things that happened to other people. And that's when she saw him. Rohan Mehta. She didn't know his name then. But she could tell, just by looking at him, that he was someone important. His suit looked like it cost more than her mother made in a year. His watch caught the sunlight and threw it back like a challenge. His shoes were so polished she could probably see her reflection in them. He was talking on his phone, his voice confident and commanding, making decisions that probably moved millions of rupees with a single word. He checked his watch, and Maya saw something in his face. Not cruelty. Not kindness either. Just distance. Like he lived in a world so far above everyone else that he'd forgotten what the ground felt like. And in that moment, Maya made a decision. It wasn't a good decision. It wasn't a smart decision. But it was the only decision she had left. Her small feet moved before her mind could stop them. She ran straight toward him, fast as her worn sandals would carry her. Just as Rohan adjusted his sleeve to check the time again, she brushed past him. Her small fingers, quick from a life that taught her to survive, slipped into his pocket and took his wallet. Then she ran. Behind her, she heard him shout. Not words at first. Just a sound of pure surprise. Then anger. Hey! Stop! Maya didn't stop. She couldn't stop. This was her plan. This was her only chance. She ran through the crowd, weaving between people in expensive clothes who barely noticed a small girl in a faded dress. Behind her, she heard heavy footsteps. He was chasing her. Good. That's what she wanted. She needed him to follow. She needed him to see. Rohan Mehta had been angry before. Angry at business deals that fell through. Angry at competitors who tried to undercut him. Angry at traffic that made him late. But this was different. This was personal. A child had just stolen from him. From him. Rohan Mehta, who owned 3 companies, who sat on 5 boards, who had security and lawyers and people who handled problems before they even became problems. And somehow, a little girl in broken sandals had just taken his wallet in broad daylight. His pride burned hotter than the Mumbai sun. He ran. His expensive shoes, made for boardrooms not sprinting, slapped against the pavement. His perfectly tailored suit jacket flapped behind him. People stared. Some stepped aside. Some pulled out phones to record. But Rohan didn't care about any of that. All he cared about was catching this little thief who dared to embarrass him. Maya ran like her life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. Her mother's life depended on it. She knew these streets better than he did. She knew which corners to turn, which alleys to duck into, which crowds to disappear through. But he was faster. His legs were longer. And he was angry enough to ignore the burning in his lungs. She could hear him getting closer. His breathing. His footsteps. The determination in every stride. Finally, Maya turned into a narrow alley. It was dark here, shadowed by tall buildings on both sides. The ground was cracked and uneven. Old posters peeled from the walls. And at the end of the alley, there was nothing. Just a tall brick wall. No door. No window. No escape. Maya stopped running. She turned around, her chest heaving, her small body trembling from exhaustion and fear. She clutched the wallet to her chest with both hands. Rohan appeared at the mouth of the alley seconds later. He stopped too, breathing hard, sweat darkening his expensive shirt. For a moment, they just stared at each other. A billionaire and a child. Power and desperation. 2 people from 2 completely different worlds. You stole from me, Rohan said. His voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. Maya didn't answer. She didn't make excuses. She didn't cry or beg. She just stood there, holding the wallet, her dark eyes fixed on his face. The silence made his anger twist into something else. Confusion. You think life is a game? He demanded, stepping closer. You think you can just take from people because you want to? Still, she said nothing. Rohan reached out and snatched the wallet from her hands. His fingers brushed hers. They were cold. Cold in a way that didn't match the warm morning. He opened the wallet, ready to see what she'd taken. And then he froze. Every card was there. Every rupee was there. Every single thing was exactly where he'd left it. Nothing was missing. Rohan looked up at Maya, really looked at her for the first time. Her dress wasn't just old. It was falling apart. Her sandals weren't just worn. They were broken. Her arms were thin. Her face was smudged with dirt. But her eyes held something he recognized even though he'd never seen it before. Exhaustion. Deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. What were you going to do with it? He asked, his voice softer now. If you didn't take anything, why? I just needed help. Her voice was so quiet, he almost didn't hear it. So quiet it was almost swallowed by the city noise beyond the alley. But he heard it. And something in those 4 words made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with running. Help, he repeated. Maya nodded. Her lips trembled, but no tears came. She'd probably cried all her tears already. Long before this moment. My mother is dying, she whispered. She's very sick. The fever won't stop. I can't, her voice broke. I can't lose her. She's all I have. The alley fell silent. Even the sounds of the city seemed to fade away. Even the morning sun seemed to stop and listen. This wasn't a thief standing in front of him. This was a child with nowhere else to turn. No one else to ask. No hope left except this desperate, impossible plan to make a rich man chase her into an alley, so he would finally see her. Rohan's anger drained away. Not slowly. All at once. Like someone had opened a door and let it all pour out. He looked at this little girl, really saw her, and suddenly his wallet didn't matter. His pride didn't matter. His meeting that he was now very late for didn't matter. All that mattered was the look in her eyes. Where is your mother? He asked quietly. Maya pointed back toward the poor side of the city. The side he never visited. The side he never thought about. And in that moment, without fully understanding why, Rohan Mehta made a choice that would change everything. "Take me to her," he said. Maya's eyes widened. Not with hope, not yet. Hope was too dangerous. Hope had hurt her too many times. But something flickered in her expression. Something small and fragile. Possibility. She turned and began to walk. Rohan followed. They left the alley and stepped back into the busy street. But somehow, everything looked different now. The tall buildings didn't seem as beautiful. The clean streets didn't seem as impressive. The people in their expensive clothes didn't seem as important. All Rohan could see was a small girl in broken sandals, leading him toward a truth he'd spent his whole life avoiding. And somewhere, in a room he hadn't seen yet, a mother was fighting to stay alive. Fighting to take one more breath. Fighting because her daughter refused to give up on her. The chase was over. But the real journey? It was just beginning. The ambulance siren that would change everything is coming. The truth that would break a billionaire's heart is waiting. And Maya's desperate gamble is about to show the world what it really means to be rich. They walked in silence. Maya led the way, her small feet moving quickly through streets that grew narrower with every turn. Rohan followed, and with each step, he felt like he was crossing into another country. No, not another country. Another world entirely. The glass towers disappeared behind them. The clean sidewalks cracked and broke apart. The air changed, carrying the smell of cooking fires, overflowing drains, and something else he couldn't quite name. Poverty. That's what it was. The smell of too many people living in too little space with too few resources. Street vendors shouted prices for vegetables. Children played in dirt lots, kicking a deflated football. A man slept on cardboard under a rusted zinc roof. Women balanced water jugs on their heads, walking with the grace that comes from necessity. This was Mumbai too, his city, but he'd never really seen it before. Maya didn't look back to see if he was still following. She didn't need to. She knew that if he was going to leave, he would have left already. That's what people always did. They left early before things got too hard, too real, too uncomfortable. Finally, she stopped in front of a building that leaned slightly to one side. The paint had peeled away years ago. Where a door should have been, there was just a faded curtain fluttering in the warm breeze. "This is where you live?" Rohan asked. His voice wasn't judgmental. It was something else. Something like realization dawning slowly and painfully. Maya nodded and pushed the curtain aside. The room inside was small. So small that Rohan's entire office could probably fit 20 of these. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, not lit because electricity was expensive. A fan stood in the corner, its blades barely turning. The floor was concrete. The walls were bare except for one small picture, a faded photograph of Maya as a baby, held by a younger, healthier version of the woman on the mattress. And then Rohan saw her. Priya. She lay on a thin mattress on the floor, covered by a sheet that had been washed so many times it was nearly transparent. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, like she was running a race she couldn't win. Her eyes were closed, but even in unconsciousness, her face showed pain. Rohan felt something crack inside his chest. This wasn't a news story. This wasn't a statistic. This wasn't poverty as a concept or a problem to be discussed in boardrooms. This was a human being. A mother. Someone's entire world, dying on a mattress on a concrete floor because the world had decided her life wasn't worth the cost of medicine. Maya knelt beside her mother, touching her arm gently. "Mama," she whispered. "Mama, I brought help." Priya's eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused at first, hazy with fever. Then they found Maya's face, and something in them softened. Love. Even through sickness and pain and exhaustion, love. "Zara," she breathed. The wrong name. The fever was making her confused. "No, Mama. It's Maya. I'm here. You're going to be okay." Rohan knelt down beside them. He'd never knelt on a floor like this before. He placed 2 fingers gently on Priya's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but it was weak. Too weak. Her skin was burning. "We need to get her to a hospital," he said. "Now." Maya's face fell. "They won't take us," she said quietly. "We owe them money. They said we can't come back until we pay." The words hit Rohan like a physical blow. They won't take us. For words that revealed everything wrong with the world he'd helped build. A world where healing had a price. Where life was something you could only keep if you could afford it. He pulled out his phone and dialed. His hands weren't quite steady. "Yes, Mr. Mehta?" The voice answered immediately. "I need an ambulance," Rohan said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. Right now. Emergency. Location, sir? Rohan looked at Maya. She gave him the address in a small voice, like she'd said it many times before to people who never cared. That area has unpredictable response times, sir. Then make it predictable, Rohan interrupted. Not shouting. Not threatening. Just absolute. Send it now. Yes, sir. Immediately. He hung up and looked at Maya. They're coming. Maya didn't smile. She didn't thank him. She just held her mother's hand tighter and waited. Because hope, when you've lost it too many times, doesn't come back easily. The minutes crawled by like hours. Priya's breathing grew more labored. She made a small sound, raw and painful, and Maya leaned close, whispering, "Stay. Please, Mama. Please stay with me." Then, from far away, a sound began to grow. Faint at first. Then louder. A siren. Maya's head lifted. Her eyes went wide. Not with joy. With disbelief. The siren grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights flashed through the curtained doorway. The ambulance had actually come. For the first time since Rohan had met her, something changed in Maya's face. Not happiness. Not relief. Just the tiniest crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. The wall that protected her from hoping. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. They moved with professional efficiency, lifting Priya carefully, checking her vitals, asking questions. Maya never let go of her mother's hand. Outside, people had gathered. Neighbors who hadn't opened their doors when Maya knocked. They stared now, not at the sick woman, not at the little girl, but at the man in the expensive suit walking beside them. Two worlds that were never supposed to touch, walking together toward an ambulance. Rohan climbed in with them. The doors closed. The siren wailed. And they raced through the streets of Mumbai toward the hospital. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Bright fluorescent lights washed everything in cold, sterile white. Nurses moved quickly, their shoes squeaking on polished floors. Machines beeped. Intercoms crackled. Life and death measured in seconds and heartbeats. Priya was rushed inside, the stretcher wheels rattling on the floor. Doctors surrounded her immediately. Pulse is weak. Temperature 104. Get a vitals panel. Prepare the exam bay. Maya tried to follow, but a nurse gently stopped her. You need to wait here, sweetheart. No, Maya said, her voice cracking. No, I can't leave her. I can't. Rohan placed a hand on her shoulder. They're helping her, he said quietly. Let them help her. The doors swung shut. Maya stood frozen, staring at them like if she looked away, her mother might disappear forever. A nurse approached with a clipboard. She looked tired. They all looked tired. We need information. Name, medical history, insurance. Put everything under my account, Rohan said. The nurse looked up. Really looked at him. Saw the suit, the watch, the authority in his voice. Sir, this could become expensive. ICU care, specialists, medication. I said, Rohan repeated, his voice perfectly calm, put everything under my account. The nurse's expression changed. Understanding and something like relief. Yes, sir. Right away. She hurried off. Maya sank into a plastic chair, pulling her knees to her chest. She looked even smaller now, like she was trying to fold herself into a space too tiny for the world to hurt her. Rohan sat beside her. Not touching. Not speaking. Just present. They waited. Time moved strangely in hospitals. Sometimes fast, sometimes unbearably slow. People came and went. Visitors with flowers. Patients in wheelchairs. Doctors rushing from one emergency to another. And then 2 security officers appeared. They walked with the heavy certainty of people enforcing rules they didn't make. One of them looked at Maya. You, he said, not unkindly but firmly. Come with us, please. Maya froze. Rohan stood immediately. For what? The officer shifted uncomfortably. We've been informed this girl has a previous incident record. Attempted shoplifting. We need to ask her some questions. Maya's face went pale. Not with fear. With resignation. Like this was always going to happen. Like punishment was the only thing the world ever gave her consistently. I didn't steal, she whispered. But her voice was too small for the hallway to respect. The officer reached out gently. Don't touch her, Rohan said. The air changed. The officer paused. She is here because I brought her here, Rohan continued, his voice steady. She is not leaving. Not now. Sir, we understand, but protocol is not more important than a child trying to save her mother. People in the hallway stopped. Looked. Listened. The officer tried again, softer. If she has a history, we're required to document. Then document her, Rohan said. But you do it here. In this hallway, where she can stay near her mother. The officers exchanged glances. One nodded slowly. Mercy disguised as permission. They stepped back and waited. Maya looked up at Rohan. Her eyes held something new. Not gratitude. Something deeper. Recognition. Someone had chosen her side. Someone had stood between her and the world. For the first time in her life, Maya wasn't fighting alone. An hour later, a doctor emerged from the ICU. His face was the kind that had seen too much, learned not to promise anything, but also learned to find hope in the smallest victories. We've stabilized her, he said. But her condition is serious. The infection has spread. Her body is exhausted. She'll need ongoing treatment. Medication. Monitoring. Without it, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. She'll have everything she needs, Rohan said. The doctor nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. Your name, Rohan Mehta. The system flagged it. This woman, Priya, she used to work for one of your companies. Janitorial staff. She was let go during a restructuring 3 years ago. The words landed like stones in still water. Rohan felt the ground shift beneath him. He remembered that restructuring. The meetings. The spreadsheets. The consultants who'd shown him how to cut costs, improve efficiency, maximize profits. Reduce janitorial staff. Automate cleaning. Remove expenses. Employees were numbers then. Line items. Percentages. Not people. Not mothers. Not lives. And now he was standing at the end of that decision. Looking at the human cost of efficiency. Priya had lost her job. Lost her security. Fallen into poverty. And eventually ended up here, on a thin mattress on a concrete floor, dying because the world had decided her life wasn't profitable enough to save. Rohan walked slowly back to the ICU window. Inside, he could see Priya through the glass. Still unconscious. Still fighting. She wasn't weak. She was strong. Stronger than he'd ever been. She'd raised a daughter alone. Worked hard. Survived. Until his company had decided she was expendable. Maya stood beside him, her small hand pressed against the glass. Can I see her? She whispered. A nurse opened the door. Just for a moment. Maya walked in like she was entering a church. Reverently. Carefully. She touched her mother's hand. Priya's eyes fluttered open. Found her daughter's face. Maya, she breathed. This time the right name. I'm here, Mama. You're safe now. Help came. Priya's eyes moved to the window where Rohan stood. They looked at each other through the glass. A long, heavy look. She recognized what he represented. Power. Distance. The world that had discarded her. But then Rohan opened the door and walked in. He stood at the foot of her bed. No suit could hide what he was feeling now. I didn't know it was you, he said quietly. I didn't know what that restructuring cost. I didn't see. I didn't look. He paused. But I see now. And I'm going to fix this. Not because of guilt. Not because of pity. Because it's right. Because you deserved better. Because your daughter deserves better. Priya stared at him for a long moment. She didn't forgive him. Not yet. Forgiveness takes time. But something passed between them. Acknowledgement. Understanding. A beginning. The days that followed were slow. Recovery always is. But things changed. Really changed. Rohan made sure Priya received the best care. Private room. Specialists. Every medication she needed. Not charity. Responsibility. And when she was finally well enough to leave, he didn't send them back to that small room with the broken fan and the thin mattress. He'd found them an apartment. Clean. Safe. With windows that let in sunlight. A refrigerator that hummed quietly. A bed that didn't sag. Curtains that were new. The day they moved in, Maya stood in the doorway, unable to speak. Priya sat in a wheelchair by the window, tears sliding quietly down her face. Why are you doing this? Priya asked. Not angry. Just tired of expecting nothing and getting nothing. Rohan looked at her. I don't want to fix your life, he said. I want to give it back to you. And for the first time, Priya smiled. Small. Fragile. But real. Weeks turned into months. Maya started attending school. She wore shoes that fit. Carried books that were new. Sat in class with the brightness in her eyes that comes from finally having room to dream. Priya grew stronger. The color returned to her face. Her laughter returned to the small apartment. And Rohan? He changed too. He went back to his glass building. His tailored suits. His boardroom meetings. But something was different now. When he looked at spreadsheets, he saw people. When he made decisions, he thought about Maya, about Priya, about all the invisible people his choices touched. He started a program. Quietly. No press release. Healthcare support for low-income workers and their families. Not charity. Responsibility. One evening, he visited their apartment. Music was playing softly. Something was cooking on the stove. The air smelled like home. Maya was drawing at the table. When she heard him at the door, her entire face lit up. Not because of what he'd done. Not because of his money. But because she knew he'd come. She ran to him. Welcomed him. Priya smiled from the kitchen. A real smile. The kind that comes from a soul that's finally healing. They sat together. Ate together. Laughed together. Not as savior and saved. Not as rich and poor. Not as employer and employee. Just as people. Connected by something more valuable than any amount of money. Care. Humanity. The choice to see someone and stay. Later that night, as Rohan drove home through the city, he thought about everything that had changed. A chase through an alley. A wallet that was never stolen. A truth that broke him open. He thought about Maya. About the desperate courage it took to grab a stranger's wallet, not to steal it, but to be seen. To be chased. To finally make someone look at her. He thought about Priya. About how close he'd come to never knowing. Never seeing. Never understanding what his comfortable decisions cost people whose names he'd never learned. And he understood something now. Something he'd never known in all his years of success. Wealth isn't money. Wealth is knowing your presence can keep someone from falling. Wealth is the willingness to stay when others leave. Wealth is the courage to look at suffering and say, "Not on my watch." Wealth is the moment you choose to see. The city lights blurred past his window. The same city he'd always known. But he saw it differently now. Because sometimes the richest thing you can do is recognize that someone else's life matters as much as your own. Sometimes wealth begins the moment you choose to care. And sometimes a little girl in broken sandals can teach a billionaire what it really means to be rich. If this story touched your heart, I want you to know something. Maya and Priya represent millions of people in our world. People who fight battles we never see. People who make impossible choices because they have no other option. People who are invisible until someone finally chooses to look. And Rohan? He represents all of us. Every single one of us who has walked past suffering because it was easier not to see. Who has made comfortable choices without thinking about who they hurt. Who has lived in one world without knowing another world existed right beside it. But this story also shows us something beautiful. Change is possible. Not through grand gestures. Through one moment. One choice. One person deciding that another person matters. You don't need to be a billionaire to make a difference. You just need to be willing to see. To stay. To care. So wherever you are in the world right now watching this story, I want to ask you something. Who is the Maya in your life? Who is fighting a battle you haven't noticed? Who needs someone to finally see them? And maybe, just maybe, you can be someone's Rohan. Not by solving all their problems, but by showing up. By staying. By saying, you matter. You're not alone. Because that's what true wealth is. Not what we keep, but what we give. Not what we own, but who we help. Not how much money we make, but how many lives we touch. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, share it. Let it remind someone that they matter, that they're seen, that they're not alone. And remember, the world changes one choice at a time, one person at a time, one act of kindness at a time. Be the change. Be the hope. Be someone's reason to believe that good still exists in this world. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never stop seeing. Because sometimes the greatest thing we can do is simply notice that someone else is human too.